welcome to a more aggressive version of Daytime than we're used to normally. I only say aggressive because of the subject matter today. We're debating boxing. Well, I suspect at home your reaction to the topic is not lukewarm. It'll probably be, well, yes, I agree with the BMA, the Medical Association. It can't be a healthy sport if the objective is to batter your opponent senseless. Now, on the other hand, you may have very fond memories of sitting up, glued to the set, following blow by blow of this week's Hagler-Mugabe match. You may have roared with the crowds when McGuigan did it again, suffering 2 lovely black eyes in the process. You may have watched, unlike Mrs. Lynette Bruno here, when her boy Frank felled Katsia in under 2 minutes. And you may feel proud that Britain might have a world heavyweight champion. But, there's always a but, isn't there? But what about brain damage? Well, you could say, and what about the chances then as well of fame and fortune? Now, I don't think any of us feel lukewarm about boxing. Just this week, Winchester College, a top public school, said their boys had hung up their boxing gloves for good, as the new headmaster deemed boxing uncivilised. The less elite association of boys' clubs say boxing is as strong as ever. A warm welcome to everyone, whatever shade of opinion you hold. Round one, though, must go to the lady who couldn't watch, Mrs. Lynette Bruno. Hello, Lynette.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in. Did you not watch because you thought he might lose?
No, not really. I just watched because I fear of the knocks that he would have got, you know. You wouldn't like to see your son get buttered, would you?
Absolutely. Do you ever try and influence him to stop?
Well, he wouldn't listen, even if you tried.
If you had, yes, he's a big boy. I said to Lynette, she's a big girl, 5'10" as well. I see where your son gets his height from. Would you have, looking back on it now that he's really very, very successful, would you like to, when he was younger, have persuaded him to go in for, well, judo or gym or something like that?
Well, you talk to him about many things, but his mind was set on boxing, and there's not much in you could do, really.
Okay. Do enjoy and join in the discussion, won't you? It's lovely to have you with us. As with you, Alan. Lovely to see you, Alan Minter. I put on that boxing glove in rehearsals, and it seemed the most sort of uncivilised thing to, you know, biff someone with it. Now, why did you want to do it?
It feels uncivilised to you, but what you've got to understand, to put on a boxing glove is for a person that's trained to box, to trained to throw a punch, to trained to avoid a punch. It's not like an average human being that puts on a glove like you just said you did, and it felt a little bit ruthless.
Uncivilised?
Uncivilised. It's not. I mean, boxing is a way of defending yourself. It's in fact like a game of chess where your opponent makes a move, you block it, and that sort of thing.
But it is the only sport, isn't it, where your actual intention is to knock your opponent senseless? Is it sport?
It's the only sport where 2 men... Well, it's not the only sport. It's one of the sports where 2 men get in the ring and both want to be winners. You don't go in the ring intentionally to hurt each other, not at all.
Do you know fully about the risks?
Of course I do. Yeah, I've been boxing for 18, 19 years, and I know all along, yeah, sure.
You knew all along. Were you ever knocked out?
Never. No.
You were one of the lucky ones.
Well, I had you know, if you train right and you live right and you're 100% fit, then you nullify all that, them problems of getting caught and...
With a bit of luck. There's always a bit of luck in any sport, isn't there?
You've got to have a little bit of luck, sure.
OK. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people in the audience who know a lot about boxing. A lot of you have come from all over Britain and know very little. So can I come to you, first of all, those of you who don't know very much? Do you think boxing should be banned? What about the lady in the pink up at the back? Wait for the...
I think professional boxing could be banned, especially when it's televised.
Right.
I think that people who want boxing should go to a particular boxing match for their own particular pleasure,
but not
inflict it on other people.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go over here. What do you feel, sir?
Yes, I think it should be banned.
You think it should be banned? Why?
Yeah, well, TV boxing is sort of pushed upon you. You know, I grew up with sort of watching the television, and I sort of got to like it, and then as I got more mature, I got to dislike it, you know, because I find that later on in people's life, they have sort of permanent injuries which they don't sort of realise until they get much older.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the example where Muhammad Ali is now sort of slowing down, his voice is getting all slow.
I think we ought to, because he and his representatives aren't here to talk about that. Let's talk to some ladies. What about the lady in the pink hat?
I think it's barbaric, but if people want to do it, well then it's free and they should carry on. They know the results.
Thank you very much. She says it's barbaric. What do you think?
Well, if it wasn't legalised, you'd only drive it underground. They'd do it in boxing booths like they did in the old days.
Like dog fighting and
Yeah,
cockfighting
cockfighting
and things.
or
What do you feel about it? Speechless. Knocked you out. Knocked you out. What do you think?
I think it's one of the greatest sports going. Amateur boxing, that is. I think that man's always fought man, and I think it's far better for them to do it in a ring, under rules, under control, rather than in wars or in streets or on football
It's
terraces.
in man, and it'll come out somehow better to be controlled. Thank you very much. Rennie Short, MP for Wolverhampton. You've asked 2 questions in the House about boxing. What are your feelings about it?
I think boxing is a barbaric activity, and I think the fact that the head is one of the major targets is quite appalling, and the brain damage that is suffered by boxers as a result is very disabling indeed.
Do you ever watch it, Rennie?
I don't normally, but I did happen to watch the Barry McGuigan fight recently.
It's compulsive, isn't it?
Well, it's a sort of horror thing, you know. And I was really horrified at the damage to his eyes that ensued from that match. And, of course, I was quite horrified when I saw his wife standing by the ringside with their little child in her arms. And I think the child must have been frightened at the battering that his daddy took.
OK, thank you very much. I think we need someone to defend boxing. Better be the fighting fireman, Terry Marsh.
Well,
Terry,
I
warm
defend
welcome.
boxing all the way. People say it's a cruel, barbaric sport, but that's what makes the spectacle. And as far as saying, like Barry McGuigan, it was in bad taste, he was receiving the punches, no doubt the ladies see it through to the very end. There's got some sort of spectacle, but people know exactly what's going on. They know the dangers, and you could say it is a bit uncivilised, but there's so many things beyond boxing what are uncivilised, what go on, which affect everybody. You talk about chemical warfare, nuclear weapons, and things like that. No, but that's where people got their priorities wrong. They seem to be so concerned about stopping boxing, thinking it's being uncivilised, when there's so more important things what people should be worrying
All right,
about.
thank you.
Let
So
the
really,
boxers get on with what they're doing.
your argument's freedom of choice. You don't have to do it. OK, let's come to our doctors here. Welcome, both of you. Totally disagree, both of you. Dr. ADRIAN, the Chief Medical Officer of the British Board of Boxing Control. There, I did it. Well done. I did do well, didn't I? And Dr. Peter Harvey, a neurologist dealing with the brain.
Or lack of them.
Or that lack of the brain. Now, would you like 1 minute, both of you, if you wouldn't interrupt, 1 minute to tell us why you think boxing is extremely harmful?
The ultimate aim of boxing, which is the only sport in which the ambition is to create brain damage, because boxers want to knock their opponent out, no matter how much they want to show how much. It's really a macho thing we've heard, and it's really to show their sporting prowess. In fact, the ultimate aim is a nice bloody knockout in the 11th. And this is the creation of brain damage. Every time a boxer is dazed, doesn't remember a round or a fight, there has been brain damage. There is increasing evidence, both experimental and from the human field, that the damage is cumulative. You get brain damage once, you're more susceptible the second time, the third time, and there is a syndrome known as the punch-drunk syndrome. I have 2 boxers under my care who have suffered this and have developed it in the modern era of medical control of boxing, with limiting fights, close medical supervision. And in this country, at any rate, it is perfectly true to say that the gross and overt syndrome of the punch-drunk boxer is a rarity, although it is still occurring.
Do you want to see boxing banned?
Oh, certainly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harvey. Dr. WHITESON, would you like to say why you think it should go on?
Yes, firstly, I agree with the gentleman in the front row just now. Firstly, you are not going to ban it, because if you do take the control away, it'll go underground, and this is one of the problems. While we have strict medical supervision, and while boxers pay attention to the advice given, and Peter and I know too well, because Peter was on the board side recently with me trying to persuade a certain heavyweight to retire. We actually had consultant neurologists trying to persuade us to give him his license back, and Peter and I went through heaven and hell. Eventually, luckily, the boy saw reason and withdrew. But to answer Rennie Short just now, boxing, the concept of boxing is not to render your opponent unconscious, because if it was, there wouldn't be a referee, there wouldn't be points scored. The majority of contests actually end on points. A boxer does not need to go in the ring if he does not want to. He is fully protected. He knows the odds, as Alan so right. Excuse me. He knows the odds, as Alan so rightly said. He knows all the dangers. Now, there is no difference, in answer to the lady, between amateur and professional boxing. A blow on the head, whether it be for money or for trophies, doesn't make any difference. There is far more danger in rugby. There is far more danger in soccer, if a boy is knocked out in the ring, he is immediately suspended for 28+ days, and we can suspend
But the
him
damage
for as
has
long
been
as-
done, though, hasn't it, by then?
Let me finish what I'm saying for a minute. The
I think you've had over a minute now.
He's had his minute.
You really have. Let's throw it open, if I may. All right, you've heard both doctors. What do you think? Chap at the
The
end.
lady there says there's no defence. That's what you got your arms for. It's where you keep your hands up and your gloves up. You ward off blows and you slip. So you have got a defence. She says there's no defence. You have got a
OK,
defence.
thank you. Let's hear some boys' clubs. You're still fighting on when Winchester's stopped. Yes, gent in the green.
It's an individual sport. It should be down to the individual if they want to do it. We all know the risks of boxing, and I don't see why people like that should be allowed to ban us, who's never been in the ring probably in their life, and ban young kids from boxing when we all enjoy it.
Do you really, gentlemen, the one in the pink sweater, do you really think you know the risks?
Yeah, of course we know. We're taught the risks as well as we're taught how to box.
Well, how do they tell you about the risks?
But I know if you don't keep your hand up, you're going to get hit.
Yeah, but that's different, isn't it?
Sarah, can I interrupt 1 second?
Of course you can.
And to say that it is fairly obvious, because whenever you watch television, and there is the ability to turn television off if you do not want to watch it, so that the choice of the individual is there. If Rennie Short wants to watch... correct. But, quite honestly, every boxer knows the risks, because unfortunately, whenever a tragedy occurs, if it occurs in any other sport, you never hear about it. If it occurs in boxing, everybody hears about it.
In fairness, on the front page of the Times today, we've got Mike goes back into battle. So is all sport, has it become more aggressive?
That is the first time you have seen a cricketer with his nose splattered, but I would guarantee that any contest you see, if it ends badly, it's repeated over and over again. The video of poor Johnny Owen, when he unfortunately died in Los Angeles, was shown over and over and over again. What for? What satisfaction did a television producer produce for that?
Dick, may I come to you about that? Yeah. Johnny was not X-rayed, was he? And wasn't that half the trouble, that if he had been X-rayed, it would have shown he had a very thin skull? Is that right?
Yes. We didn't know nothing at all about it. If we had known about it, well, we'd gone into another sport. You'd have gone a marathon running or something like that, you know.
And do they now have compulsory X-rays?
Oh, yes.
They do. So your son would still be alive today if you got exactly what Adrian is saying, better medical supervision?
Yes.
Sarah, can I
Was he worried about the element of risk to his health, Dick?
No.
Never
That
occurred to
doesn't
him?
come into it then. You don't think of those things at all.
How old was he when he died?
24.
24.
Sarah, can I just
But
throw one...
again, coming back on it, I see more in the valley of punches and thickness and speaking from rugby forwards than what I've ever seen of boxing. I don't know why this has gone on for about 8 years now, I think, of against boxing. This is an annual thing. You want to look at other sports as well.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Where's Frank? Can I think you've had a fair whack there.
Excuse me, there you have a gentleman who's lost the ultimate, a son, and yet still would support the sport. Now, that has got to be a tremendous boost to boxing. He knows the odds, and he would still say there is far more danger. You cannot prevent boys or girls doing what they want them to do.
OK, thank you very much. Frank Warren, may I come to you? You promote. You promote Terry and you promote George Collins over there. Now, in fairness, these are the guys that go into the ring. You've put your money behind them. You've got an eye to see that they're good, but it's not your brain that's going to be bashed out or your eye that you might lose. Do you exploit them, do you think?
Yes, I do exploit them. I exploit their ability and their talent, and they exploit my business acumen and maybe the connections I may have. But they know the risk before they go in. All boxers are licensed by the Boxing Board Control, and as Mr. Whiteson said, or Dr. Whiteson said, they go for a very stringent medical test. Now, if a boxer gets stopped, he's out of the ring for 28 days. He has to have a thorough medical again before he can box. And we do the best we can to look after him. If a fighter looks like he's not doing so well, then we will stop him from boxing ourselves.
When one of your boys comes out of the ring really hammered and bleeding and maybe bits and pieces hanging off, what do you actually say to him? What do you actually feel as a person?
Well, I've not had a boy come out hammered, really bleeding, and, you know, as you say, bits falling off. I've had boxers get beat, but they're examined, medically examined. If it looks like they've taken, not done so well, then obviously we will talk about whether they should fight again. But as I said, they have to be medically examined before they are allowed to go back in the ring. But one point I'd like to make, it's all very well the medical profession keep knocking our sport. What about doctors who exploit people's vanity, for example, in cosmetic surgery, and the people who die under the knife?
Well, I think that's another thing. Thank you very much indeed. You wanted to say something, Justin?
Yes, I think the point is that the aim of boxing is to create brain injury. If you took the brain out of the target area...
it isn't.
Well, take the head out of the target zone then. Take the head out of the target zone then and see what happens.
Well, that's an idea, isn't it? You take the head out. What about that?
The impression you're giving is two chaps going to the ring to smash each other's heads in. That isn't the point at all. As Alan said here, it's a defensive sport. It's a control sport. There are qualified coaches at every club who have to teach these boys how to box. And there's no way of boxing with the intention of smashing his opponent to the ground.
Well said. Well said, Renee.
Why shouldn't you take the head out? I think we've not really had an answer to that. And I think that would take a great deal of the danger and the damage out of rugby.
Would anybody feel in the audience who wants to comment on the head aspect?
Well, it's a shame that there's not more young children. I mean, I've got a boxing pub in the Old Kent Road, and my children can't go out on a Sunday afternoon on their bikes or whatever with drugs and thieving and whatever. And it's a shame there's not more young kids in boxing clubs getting rid of the aggression that they've got in them, discipline in them.
George, you're 18 years old. You're really in there. You want a career out of boxing, although you're amateur at the moment. You can't do anything until you're 21.
You're on there. I'm professional at the moment.
I'm sorry.
I'm professional.
I do beg your pardon, but you can't do a championship until you're 21, can you?
No, that's right. But I've been professional since I was 17.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. What do you feel about taking the head out of boxing?
I think that's crap.
Why?
You can hurt somebody.
Yes, go on.
You can hurt somebody in the body just as much as you can the head. It might not do so much damage.
Brain's crucial.
Yeah. But we've taken below the belt. We've taken the below the belt. Why not take the head away?
I should bring below the belt.
Well, it'd just take all the skill out of boxing.
Would it?
Yes, definitely.
You think it wouldn't work? What about this gentleman here?
Well, if you're going to take the head out and worried about the damaged head, what you going to do with footballers? Told them not to head the ball? Just smash
Do
it
they get
against
brain damage through football?
Yes,
I don't
very
know.
much
Do
so.
they? OK, let's go over here. This gentleman wants to say something. Now, this is Dr. Kundit Jeff. Hello. You were one of the authors of the British Medical Association report. What would you like to say?
Well, basically, it's a complicated document, that report. But in one sentence, we found that if you hit the head, you damage the brains. And since that report has come out, we have had work done showing that young amateur boxers do get psychological impairment. And the evidence is that if you hit the head, you cause brain damage. It may be very slight. With minor punches, it can occur in boxers who have only sparred, never actually boxed.
Thank you. This punch-drunk syndrome that we started talking about a little earlier on, does that happen to other people?
It happens to old ladies who are mugged repeatedly.
Yeah. What other sports?
In our report, we had 2 rugby players and 290 boxers being treated for the punch-drunk syndrome in 1975.
May I interrupt 1 second, because that's a totally wrong statistic. Where does that come from, Dr. Cundy? 290... Excuse me 1 second.
It is in our report.
Excuse me, 290 boxers from England?
Those were English neurologists who had...
Excuse me, 290 boxers from England.
Were they from England?
If so, name them.
They were seen in England by neurologists who were surveyed in 73.
I am sorry, your facts are wrong.
Oh, well, we don't...
Totally.
All right, you let the audience make up their own mind on this. Let us go on.
Could I
Thank
quote
you. I
one
was
other
going
case?
over here. This gentleman here. Thank you very much.
Look, I am 79 years of age. I started with bad eyes. I couldn't see. There was no British boxing border control. This is a photograph in the boxing, 1924. The consistently successful paperweight cyclone. I was knocking them all out. My first 40 fights, I was a machine like McQuiggan.
How did it affect your health?
My health, beautiful. It's taught me one thing. When they found out that I couldn't see my last fight, my manager found out night before, and I had to cry and beg of him. I showed a report in the paper about it. Please let me have this fight. I won't fight no more. I've never been stopped, never been... He found out, because the night before we had to go to Liverpool Stadium. He says...
All right. So you're very happy about... You're very happy about boxing.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Now, I must go on, sir, because I've got lots of time. Sorry, I really must. I do beg your pardon. It's time. Tell me afterwards. Mrs. Bruno, does Frank honestly ever sit down over the cup of tea over the table and say to you, Mum, I'm going to stop sometime, or I'm worried? Does he ever say that sort of thing?
Well, my son doesn't talk boxing with me, because he knows definitely that I don't love boxing. So he keep me as far as possible from boxing.
Right, it sounds like, probably like lots of sons. Any more opinions up at the top? This gentleman up here. I'll come over to you in a sec, sir.
Thank you. I would like to draw the line between what you are exploiting at the moment, which is the professional side of boxing. You have not yet looked at the amateur side.
No, sure. Would you like to say...
Now, in the amateur boxing world, in England, there's 800 clubs. There's 30,000 active boxers. Their medical is based on the normal thing that a form is sent to their parents, making them aware of the possible dangers. They are medically examined at 10. The card is held as fit to train to box, and then they're allowed to box at 11 years of age. 3 1 hours, 1 minute round in between. This progressively goes on. And before ever the BMA report came out, we took many, many safety factors.
So you're very happy with how amateur sport is run, if I may. I must move on.
I'm happy with them, but unless I can tell the people around here what they are, they can't be happy.
Well, if you said you're
give
happy,
the
thank you.
much more
Thank you, go on.
Yeah, I think the ones who are causing the arguments are some of the doctors from the medical profession, and they say about banning boxing within 10 years, but they're the ones that should be banned within 10 years.
Who's meant to be banned?
The doctors who are condemning boxing because they're telling people what they already know.
Telling people what they already know. Thank you. The lady in the blue over there.
I think the boxing, well, like someone said, if an old woman gets mugged, why doesn't she learn about boxing as a self-defence?
Would you like to learn how to box, madam?
I think perhaps self-defence might be a good idea.
Not that you're an old woman, I hate it. Let's go back a little, picking up on what that gentleman was saying. Carol Robotham. Did I nearly get it right? I did. You're a schools inspector for PE, aren't you? Yes. The Inner London Education Authority. What is the feeling in schools? What's the policy?
It's banned in the Inner London Education Authority in the school context because we feel that it is not the sort of activity where there is foreseeable injury, where we should condone it as a profession.
But kids in playgrounds, they're bashing each other to bits, aren't they?
But at the same time,
Let her have her say.
in other sports we have very...
Hang on, let him have his say.
Very strong safety regulations which we adhere to most strongly so that children are prevented from becoming injured, whereas in boxing obviously one of the aims is to land a blow on your opponent, and I feel, and so does my profession, that that is not something that we should condone within the school curriculum.
What do you feel though about the kids up there saying there's nothing wrong with it? They know all the safeguards.
Well, I think you can't have, within an educational context, some children wanting to do it and some children not wanting to do it, but I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing to happen in boys' clubs.
Do you
or
watch
youth
it?
club. Oh, yes.
Lovely. Alan, you're very involved with kids, aren't you?
Yes,
What's your policy there, really?
Well, I think boxing should be brought back to schools for a start, because, you know, the schools today, you get teachers being frightened to go to school, you get bullies at school. But when you had boxing in schools, I know universities and places like that still have boxing. When you have boxing in secondary modern schools, you do away with all this bullyism because it doesn't happen. Because then, if there's a bully starts knocking a young kid around, you say to the bully, OK, you, and pick someone else out his size, and you, in the ring tonight in front of the whole school.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of people have commented. Can I just ask you this, Dr. Candy? If the BMA has its way and bans boxing, what are you going to put in its place?
Well, we could start with defensive skills like judo. We could go for... well, I wouldn't guarantee that I could defend myself against Frank Bruno. The man with the biggest punch wins in boxing.
Is he a beast? Is he a beast?
There are other skills. Addy Maffey...
What else?
Addy Maffey has an excellent career ahead of him. In athletics, you can get rid of a lot of aggression in a sprint or a quarter mile.
Sarah,
okay,
can I get back one
and then
very quickly. One thing I don't think ladies and gentlemen realise, the BMA is not representative of all the medical profession. 650 people turned up at the BMA annual conference. Of those, 450 decided to attend the particular debate. 240 voted for, 210 against. So as far as that was concerned, the BMA is not
Peter,
representative
last word to you.
at all.
Okay, last word to Peter.
The point is that no amount of medical supervision can predict the catastrophe. And in a sport where the brain is put at risk intentionally by the activities of the sportsman concerned, it is an unacceptable risk in modern society.
I'd like to leave the last word to the audience. Would you like to put up your hands if you think boxing should be banned?
Oh, very poor.
Very, very few indeed. Okay, all right. You forgot. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all for this week. We pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, and yes, start all over again on Tuesday. Thank you all for today's Body Blows. God, where are my gloves? My gloves. Goodbye from all our guests and the daytime team. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to take part in the daytime audience, the number to ring is 01-484-2345. The lines are open now and will remain open until 4 p.m.
Central has the ultimate in driving action. Michael Knight is Knight Rider, and together with Kit, the Knight 2000, they cruise the highways in their never-ending battle against crime. It's the fastest thing on 4 wheels, and it'll be coming your way every Friday at 7:30. Knight Rider, driving action on Central.
Plans for the Gems fashion collection to be shown are uppermost in Stephen's mind in Gems next this afternoon on Central.